Good afternoon. I'm Congressman Steve Israel from Long Island, New York. I'm joined by Ellen Miller, the co-founder and executive director of the Sunlight Foundation, and Andrew Rasiej, the founder of the Personal Democracy Forum. And today we're here to announce the Public Online Information Act, or otherwise known as POIA. POIA is going to take public information by the executive branch out of the dark ages, out of the dark government warehouses, out of the metal file cabinets, and into the sunlight of the internet. Here's how we came up with this idea. Last summer, I joined Ellen and Andrew at the Personal Democracy Forum conference in New York. And Andrew brought up the idea of redefining the word public to mean online and searchable. We realized that government has something called the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, which is intended to give Americans access to information by the federal government. Only FOIA is outdated. We now need POIA. We need a Public Online Information Act that will make it easy for Americans to get executive branch information from their computers, from their homes, in their classrooms. Today, the government stamps a document public, and then this is what they do. They ship it off to a warehouse in Maryland or elsewhere. They throw it into a metal file cabinet. It never sees the light of day. That is about as public and about as transparent and accessible as a nuclear missile silo. The Public Online Information Act is going to change that. Number one, it's going to require that all executive branch agencies put their public information online, out of the warehouses, out of the file cabinets, online. It's going to require a user-friendly format. It's going to require that the information be permanently available. It's going to require that no charges or fees be imposed on anyone accessing that information. Every single federal agency is going to establish a searchable catalog of all disclosed public documents. And it gives the executive branch a reasonable period of time to achieve these goals. We give the executive branch 3 years for internet disclosure of public records. It also sets up an advisory committee to develop policies for internet publication. Now, once we pass this bill, and once this bill is signed, it will truly put every executive branch document on the laptops, on the desktops, in the classrooms, in the offices and homes of every American. When Andrew and I were talking about this, I was reminded by the last scene in one of my favorite movies, Raiders of the Lost Ark. And in that last scene, there is this vast, cavernous warehouse where government keeps all its secrets. Thanks to this bill, that scene will be something you only see in the movies, and executive branch documents will be something you can get on your computer. This bill will make government more transparent, more accessible, and more efficient. And let me turn it over to my partners on this project. First, the Sunlight Foundation, which has been a critical partner, co-founder and executive director, Ellen Miller.
First of all, I want to note and raise the awareness to the fact that we could not have a better day to talk about transparent government than on a day like today. Representative Israel, I want to thank you for your tremendous leadership in developing this piece of legislation. I'm Ellen Miller, executive director and co-founder of the Sunlight Foundation, which takes its inspiration from Justice Brandeis's very powerful adage, sunlight is said to be the best of disinfectants. I helped to co-found this organization nearly 4 years ago to use cutting-edge technology and ideas to make our government transparent and accountable. You can learn more about us at sunlightfoundation.com. At the heart of our mission is a belief that technology can be used to create a more informed and engaged citizenry, and as a result, a more accountable and responsive government. As wired citizens, we now expect to find almost whatever we want online. I can book an airline ticket from my laptop at 1 o'clock in the morning. I can look at my latest credit card transactions, the weather forecast, local traffic reports. However, if I want to look up government information, I have to go to that warehouse that Representative Israel just described, or work on a bulky vintage computer screen in the basement of some office building here in Washington, which may only be open from 9 to 5. Or, indeed, I might even have to file a formal request for information that is actually supposed to be publicly available online. Washington can't operate this way anymore. The solution to this problem is access on the internet. Congressman Israel understands the revolutionary potential of this game-changing medium. It's the 21st century. Public information can only be considered public if it's online, 24/7 available, for free, and in a user-friendly format that computers can easily read. This is why we're very pleased to support this legislation. The Public Online Information Act grows directly from one of Sunlight's core principles, that is, that in this day, public equals online. POIA will ensure that government information from across agencies will be available to anyone within a few keystrokes of their computer. This public information has a deep impact on almost every aspect of American life. Some of it can be used to hold government accountable or have a profound effect on health, economic development, and commerce. POIA advances our ability as citizens to know the work of government, and it shifts the burden from the public to request public information to a paradigm in which government actually proactively makes information available. To ensure that POIA and other transparency initiatives are enacted by our Congress, this Thursday, the Sunlight Foundation will announce a national Public Equals Online campaign, and POIA is the first of many bills and activities that we will support. The story of how POIA came to be proves just how strongly the public believes in this cause. And to give you that context, I'm happy to introduce my friend and colleague, Andrew Rasiej, founder of the Personal Democracy Forum. And in the interest of transparency, I should also add that Andrew Rasiej is a consultant to the Sunlight Foundation. Andrew.
So thank you very much. I'd just like to add a few words from the perspective of a citizen. I was fortunate enough to be standing in front of an audience of my peers last year at the Personal Democracy Forum when I spontaneously proposed the idea that all public information should be redefined as searchable and available on the internet. And the audience immediately spontaneously applauded, and I parked that enthusiasm in my brain. And then later on in the same day, as a matter of fact, at the end of the day, I was fortunate enough to be seated on a panel that I was moderating on various subjects related to transparency, government, and making our government work better. And I was fortunate enough to sit next to Steve Israel, and I realized that I could actually make democracy work right then and there by going to a local congressman and simply suggesting to him that he take up this idea himself. And I have to say that in that particular day, Steve Israel confirmed my belief in democracy in its purest form, our 18th century, our 19th century, and our 20th century democracy. But the reason why this particular bill is so important isn't just because of what the bill says today about the ability of us to be able to find public information that's required by law to be online. It's more important because it's the first salvo in a long battle to convert our government from a 20th century perspective into a 21st. And when the history books of the 22nd century look back at the 21st, they will look back at this day in the leadership of Ellen Miller, Steve Israel, and Congress in the process of converting our government into 21st century reality. Thank you very much. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Ellen.
Thanks. Questions? Any? Yep. Do we foresee any opposition? The only opposition is going to be based on the supporters of the status quo. There are going to be some in the executive branch who say, well, we need to study this, and it's going to be a burden on us to put all of this on the internet. And we think we made reasonable accommodations to them by giving them 3 years in order to effectuate this transformation. There's no good reason to oppose this bill other than we want to keep documents inaccessible. We want to keep documents hidden and secret. And that is not an agenda that we can support. Other questions? Yes?
What information will remain, do you think, should remain offline, should not be considered public?
Well, whatever the government currently deems as classified information or gives current categories of classification. You know, I'm on the Intelligence Oversight Panel. Obviously, there are some documents that, for very good reasons, need a higher level of scrutiny and a higher level of confidentiality. And so this is very simple. Whatever that is currently deemed public by the executive branch has to be truly public by being online and searchable. What the executive branch believes requires a level of classification and confidentiality will remain so.
One thing I've avoided in the past is correspondence between lawmakers and different executive officials. Would you think all of those correspondence should be made?
I think we should go there. Yeah. Look, we're starting off with the executive branch in this bill because the vast majority of information is with the executive branch, but I do believe that we need to move further and extend broader to include the legislative branch. Let me just wrap up by giving you one other anecdote that compelled me to introduce this bill. Shortly before my conversation with Andrew, he was very effective, but he actually he pressed a button because shortly before my conversation with him at the Personal Democracy Forum conference, I was watching the History Channel, and there was a special on about the Hindenburg disaster in the 1930s. And these historic researchers wanted to get information about the Hindenburg disaster. And they had to navigate this complex bureaucracy, find this underground warehouse, find the right file cabinet in row after row after row of file cabinets, find the right drawer, open up this manila folder that had been sitting there with files from the Hindenburg disaster for 60 years. Now that just doesn't make sense. In this day and age, we ought to have made it easier for these historians to get that information, and we should make it easier for all Americans to understand what the government is saying, what we're doing, and the best way to do that is by putting this information online. My best tool as a member of Congress is this. I can look up almost anything. I can access everything, including how many calories I burned. The American people should be able to figure out how much government is spending by accessing public documents with the same platform. Thanks very much.
Thank you.